Well, hello everybody. Tonight is another episode on Gelvin Valley. And last episode, I mentioned briefly a game, actually kind of at length, that kind of asserted that it was so much more advanced than Farming Simulator. I thought I would just show it. I actually located it on my computer, got it installed, and thought I would put it in here, kind of just for a hoot. It's called Sim Farm. Back in the day, as you can hear, it has some very obnoxious music. We'll try to get out of this as soon as we can. First order of business is to turn off the music. Ah, that'd just go on forever. But this is kind of what the map looked like in Sim Farm. And I just kind of looked in here a little bit ago and reacquainted myself, with kind of all the things that are in there. Oh, actually, it's the time is moving. You could choose how quickly you wanted to move the time. Kind of similar to what we do now. But look at all these things in here. You have rocks to remove. I mean, they had the rock mod before I made a rock spawn. You got water to deal with. You have fences here. And I think you can spray and plant. These are kind of actions, but you can bulldoze the rocks, if you will, take them out so they're no longer obstacles. Plant trees if you so choose. This is something for your livestock to eat and drink out of. These are irrigation ditches. This is livestock food. You can make new fences, pave roads, all these things in here, and it's kind of on a larger map, if you will. This is where the river runs through. Our home is down here, so there's all this real estate around here that you could purchase, and then there's a town up here that could expand. And you can kind of just like we can within farming sims see various filters. This is if there is problems with weeds or if the soil is toxic, not farmable, or pests, of some kind and so forth, or too wet. Um, all of these kinds of things. Obviously, on the river, the water's going to be high. And then buying it. I mean, look at some of this. This was back in the 90s when this game was released. You come in here, this is where you buy all your stuff. So you want a tractor? $400. Well, I mean, tractors back then were way more than just $400, of course. But kind of the price mismatch, whether you get a tractor, $400, or buy a cow, it's 480. I guess they must have seen it kind of as same difference. So, it wasn't much variety, and this is how it would look on the map, when you got it. But you could get a tractor, a crop duster. Actually, let me go this way. A plow. They had the basics here: planter, sprayer, combine, harvester, even a trailer or a truck to haul in your stuff, even a crop duster. You had to pay buco bucks to get a crop duster, and you could literally fly it around on the map. Then they had all these different kinds of crop that you could put in, buying seed, I think. And notice here, I mean, this kind of even has, this is where I say even some of these older games had innovations in them that were ahead of where even the Giants Farming Simulator is. It notes here removes a lot of nutrients from the soil. Fertilize or rotate with other crops. Well, a lot of these indicate only do it a couple times because it would impact, apparently, the game. If you planted it too often or too frequently, you wouldn't get as good a yield. So some of these crops we have in farming sim, but there's a whole lot of them you just don't see. I mean, occasionally you'll get a map that puts sorghum in it or whatever. Soybeans we have now, cotton, but it's not very often in farm sim you see onions. Tomatoes, I think you see in a greenhouse, and so forth. And if this wasn't enough, you could always load a crop. And they had others, and now it only could handle a certain matrix of crops. So if you wanted to add another one like, oh, tobacco, so you could replace it, so we're replacing corn with tobacco, and now you could put that in there. So it had all kinds of options. To my knowledge, I don't think this was moddable or anything like that, but pretty advanced for its time. So, and you had that, you had a choice of animals, cow, pig, sheep, horse. It took us a long time in Farming Sim to get all those options. And these are grain bins, varying sizes or buildings. I think eventually you could get an upgrade in the house. Actually, that probably isn't in here. But water pump, I mean, these are kind of placeables, functional placeables in a game, eons older than Farming Sim had all this. And this is chemicals and fertilizer you could purchase. Again, it's kind of like it had the soil mod built in. So just something in a very old game where you have a lot of options, and I don't know how others feel, on these old games that, were once available. I think a lot of it is whether a game is good to play or not is how much it stimulates your imagination. And even though the graphics look terrible or whatever, I mean, I remember playing this for hours at a time, and I was fine. It was enjoyable, it was interesting. Of course, we had nothing else better to compare it to, but it doesn't have to be flashy. It has to be a well-made game, if it keeps the attention of people. This then, of course, is where you sold your equipment, your animals, your crops if you needed to. Let's see what other options. Oh, music and sound effects. The sound effects are broken. I can't get them to go. Yeah, there's a few things. Auto lease. Yeah, you think got a lease in here. How long did it take for the Giants to put that in there in Farming Sim? It was either buy it or nothing. Sometimes there'd be a mod to lease things, kind of like we're using over in Gelvin Valley. But this had all that in there. You could lease or buy. At speed, we kind of have those options. These are various windows to look at, and I think those are all kind of along here. Disasters. You could choose, you could bring on your own disaster if you wanted, so you can see the little tornadoes spin across there, causing damage, uprooting whatever it's going through, or and so forth. I won't do all that here. Or it would come at random. It had its own weather system in it, and it was which is similar to Farming Sim. It could impact severely, what you were doing. It's got a market in here. Well, that kind of looks a little funky. But you can see where the price has been on all these commodities. You know kind of when to sell it. Um, yeah, we're in the edit map. This is a financials. I think I said in the last episode. I mean, look at this. They even build in a balance sheet of all things. And then they have a profit and loss. We don't even have this in Farming Sim. We do have kind of a P&L or whatever, but we don't have a balance sheet. That's props to them for doing that, even recording your futures. And I think here's bank loan. They had a credit limit, and in Farming Sim, I think it's kind of a hard limit. This one here, as I recall, adjusts. Oh, and look at that interest. Yeah, see, this game was produced in a different era, when there was higher interest rates or whatever. But just driving home the point that even some of these old games had features, that kind of exceed, what's available even now. This must be the weather. So you got a window there. This would show the whole map. Yeah, we already looked at that. So maybe I'll get off of this. I was just thinking of it here, so I thought I would crank it up and show everybody a little bit and have a little fun. So we'll get out of there. I did install a DOS box and everything just to put this on there. So we will exit out of there, and then I'm gonna crank up Farm Sim 15 as soon as I get my icon back here. Hope everybody is having a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're at. And thanks for stopping by here to take another look at Gelvin Valley. If I recall correctly, we're in the middle of making some bales. So we will resume that here shortly as soon as the game loads up. I gotta be careful I don't tip my drink over. Apologies, I still kind of have a cold, but I'm going to be working my way out of it hopefully soon. And this is where my friend Atomic encourages me. I need to edit my videos to get rid of the down area because Nobody likes watching the load screen. Although we can learn from here, the inspiration for the map, I don't know that we've stopped to look at this, Dungiven Sperrin Mountain area, Northern Ireland, Donegal Town area. I remember there was a map made in FS15. I remember it being on FSUK. I think it was called A Touch or A Taste of Donegal. And I think it was a map that had a lot of pasture or grassland areas, I recall. Eyre, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing these right. I probably not. Patna, Dalmellington area, East Ayrshire. An Irish, Scottish, British map. Well, I'll take your word for it, Wes. I've never been there. So let's hop in game. And there's our puppy to meet us. And we will resume making bales. Get it cranked back up. So I'd be curious to know in the comments, if you haven't left one on the previous video. We just looked at Sim Farm a little bit, and I am quite happy. I don't mean to imply that I'm not happy with Farming Sim at all, quite to the contrary. I really appreciate this game for all that it has, and each iteration it improves, and more things are added, and I really appreciate the ability to mod the game. That's something Sim Farm couldn't say that it had. But I'd be curious, what games have you played, and were you as crazy as I was, trying to look for games that would feed your appetite, if your appetite is farming, that is. I was just on the hunt for them, and whenever I found one, I would typically try to buy it and test it out, and some of them were absolute duds. There's at least one or two of them. I don't even remember the names of them. All I remember is getting them, and they really didn't work very well, or were just so unrealistic, so divorced from reality that it's like I just can't do this. I know there's all kinds of farming type games out there, if you will. I know my kids have played even a couple of them. My daughter, I think she has one on, oh, what's it called? Heyday? Is that a name of one of them? And I just can't. I go on there and I tease her about this. She will raise pigs, and they will have like harvestable bacon. And I mean, it just seems barbaric. That's what I tease her about. That she would go, and no, they don't butcher the pigs. It's like they chop the meat off their bones to turn it into bacon or whatever. It's like, what the world? That has obviously no basis in reality, and that's what some of these quasi so-called farming games, can do. So, no, I'll take our farming simulator, including Farm Sim 15, and I'm good with it. I'd be curious if there are other farming type games out there that, maybe you tried, you used at one point. And I'll have to do some searching and digging. I mentioned one other one that I kind of liked. It had less bells and whistles than Sim Farm did, if you can call that bells and whistles. But, I enjoyed it too because it stimulated the imagination and the mind. It was just a 2D game, top down, but in my mind, I had a working corn and soybeans farm. That was Stake Your Acres. I'm sure I probably have that somewhere. I would just need to look it up and find it. But what say all of you? This actually seems to be going by pretty quick. I think kind of starting this, I think I mentioned at some point I wanted to just, oh, and look at this. I mentioned having a mod in here called IC Bales, and I'm just looking on it down here, Field 42, I'm seeing some bales up in the brush. How in the world would they get up there? Unless it's just off the PDA map. But we're getting them laid down, And this is something else. I was just listening to a video a friend made today, actually an older one of his, and he just commented and he said he doesn't load bales by hand. I think what he meant is, like using the front end loader of a tractor or whatever. I've done that a few times. Can't really say I've done that with round bales. I end up just getting frustrated, and it isn't fun anymore. Especially when the bales tip over funny or I can't grab them just right. And for all I know, I have messed these bales up, kind of by writing that script so that they kind of adhere to the hill, which may mean that they don't behave quite like, a regular bale was intended to behave, because, it's been altered. So, so I think what I'll do, this is what I did last time, is I just got an auto load trailer and I came through here and I just pretended there was a tractor in the field loading it dutifully and that the guy was really, really fast, and that's how my trailer got loaded. So that's probably what I'll do to pick them up. But I do know there are some players out there who are very good at loading bales, very good at with their hands, I guess. I mean, I can't imagine how long it took to build dexterity in their fingers to. Well, of course, I do everything on the keyboard at the moment, um, and it's pretty hard to work a front loader, by kind of by hand. But maybe somebody out there does it and has figured out just the right combination of keys to load these things. Part of me wonders I could bring in the auto load trailer, and I could bring in a tractor with a front end loader. I do have a front end loader for this, and I can at least pick up the bales with it and then drive it to the trailer, which would then peel it off the fork and auto stack it for me. That might be closer to reality. I don't know. But maybe someone watching this is someone who's a expert on it and knows exactly how to do it in Farming Sim 15. Um, Even dealing with its wonky physics, that knows exactly how to do it just right. And it is something that has come quite a ways, in these later versions of the game. First version of Farming Sim that I ever played was FS09, and wow, I mean, those bales, you basically couldn't handle them at all. Not by hand, not by machine. About the only way you could deal with those bales was to have an auto loader, and I forget what it was called. It started with an A. Was that Arcusin? I don't know how you pronounce it now. I'm probably saying it wrong. That was the only way you could have any peace in terms of hauling bales in Farm Sim 09. You can make them easy enough, but once they were in bales, in terms of trying to stack them on a trailer, you just weren't going to do that. Wasn't in the cards. I remember before getting that particular mod, making a whole bunch of bales on the map and then taking the loader out because I didn't know any better, and learning firsthand just what kind of a mess I'd created for myself. And at that time, I didn't have any idea how to do any modding. I wouldn't have known how to open any XML file, to edit the save game or anything like that. So it was a big deal to make all those bales, and now all of a sudden I got to do something with them and get them to go away. So I seem to recall there was something that you could buy to put on the front of your tractor, like a blade or something. Is that what it was? Where you could push onto objects. I think it called a pusher of rocks, but really the rocks that were there that were kind of embedded in the map, you really couldn't push them anyhow. I tried, but they didn't budge. But one thing you could push was bales. So I remember having a field of them, and as I recall, there was really only one area where you could get rid of the bales. I don't know if anybody remembers that old FS09 map, but you had to haul it to the main farm, then you had to stick it in the bale elevator, and it would haul it up into the barn, and you would hear it go cha-chink or whatever up there and give you money. make the money payment sound or whatever. Well, so that's the only place I knew of to get rid of the bales, and not only was it the only place, she had to lift the things up, kind of onto the makeshift bale elevator to get them out of there. So after the pain of using this rock pusher thing to get all those bales over to the farm, but I pushed them from the far corners of the map, trying to get them all over there, and then one at a time. I remember just going through there, wrestling with the front loader, trying to get those bales up on there just to get rid of them. I think I eventually got through them, and I don't think I ever made another bale again until I had something to handle them automatically. It was just too much trouble doing that. And at the time, I just assumed it was me, my lack of skill or whatever, and, that probably other people knew exactly how to do it. Because I almost think in the Giants printed literature that they had a picture in there of a trailer full of bales or whatever. Well, I would have liked to see them stack it before I believe that they actually did that. Probably what they did is they stacked them all in XML and told them exactly where to plunk themselves on the trailer, and that's how they got them on there. And then they probably went in game, had to hurry, take the picture before it all fell apart. That's probably what they had to do. But never have been very good at handling front end loader type work when it comes to bales, or in the case of pallets, things that require a forklift or that kind of thing. But that's all right. Everybody's got their own way to play, and I kind of corner on that and use an auto load trailer. And there was a couple of auto load trailers or scripts made for FarmSim 15, kind of towards the end of it. And I think I actually have both installed in this map here. One works in single player only. I think it has trouble in multiplayer unless you're the one who owns the server. If the game is being played off of your computer, then I think you can load bales with it, but other players can't. It will appear to load them, but as you drive away, you'll realize your trailer is empty. So kind of a quirk with that one, it wasn't set up with all the multiplayer coding done in the script. The second one has all the multiplayer stuff taken care of, so it's a little more adaptable. But I kind of like the first one a little better, so, if I'm just playing by myself here, oh, I gotta remember I'm failing, I gotta stop. So that's probably the one I'll use. Let's see here. Oh, so this is the big field we got to do. Field 42. I guess we got another big field coming. That's going to be field 30. Well, we got several. We got a lot of bales to make. I almost think I told people I wasn't going to drag them through this, but look at me. Here we go, dragging you through it all. So hopefully I'm not boring anybody to tears. It's probably kind of hard to sit here and listen and watch while some old guy just drones on and on about things that maybe are interesting to him but may not be to anyone else. Last night, as I think about this is the first episode I'm recording for today. I kind of got started recording right as, I don't know when the right time to comment on all this. It just comes to mind now. One of my sons he just graduated high school. He is very interested in beekeeping. Well, I think he is. Personally, I think he was born to it. He he's going to be taking in college. He'll go into, I think, take business classes, including accounting. So in that regard, he's kind of checking out the occupation, that I'm in every day, accounting. But I really think his first love is beekeeping. He, ever since, oh goodness, probably the seventh or eighth grade, he has worked for a beekeeper summers when he's out of school, and including when he was in school. I gotta say, this is where COVID, as much of a curse as I'm sure it has seemed to everybody, and oh, by the way, I have COVID right this moment. I've had to stay home from work this whole week and try to work from here a little bit. It's been frustrating. So, for things like that, where you're confined to your home, not allowed to go out, the kids of this generation have kind of been shafted, with their schooling, to being taken out of school, what was it, a full year and a half, maybe depending on the area. But in some ways, a lot of these kids, my son included, kind of took advantage of the time that they had away from school to do something productive. You know, uh, there was less class lecture time. And I would have thought, because we got this all set up, online learning, where it's the same teacher in the classroom. I just assumed, well, if you're in school for, what is it, 6 hours a day, I don't know how much, that I just assumed that it would be in parity. Okay, 6 hours of regular class time. Well, then your teacher is going to sit in front of a camera for 6 hours and is going to educate you, only now you'll be watching from a computer screen and sitting at home. Well, that isn't what they did. What they did instead is they shortened the time sitting there, maybe because they knew people were looking at computers for it all. I don't know. It just seemed like they shortened it. Well, that left quite a bit of extra time uh, for a lot of these kids to do other pursuits. And so I know what my son did is he spent a lot more time working, and I think sometimes he even missed some of the lecture time at school, but he did all his homework, he did all that, he kept up his grades. He still graduated of valedictorian with straight A's. I don't know how he pulled it off, but he did. And at the same time, he earned quite a bit of money by working during school. And I know in my growing up years, I worked summers, but I never worked, at least not a lot, during the school year. I worked in Lone Oak, but I didn't do a lot. I did some on weekends or what have you. But he, in the middle of the week, the school week, he would be off working for his employer, doing beekeeping stuff. So, good for him, good for the other kids who were able to do that, that were able to earn a little bit of money kind of on the side and kind of get some benefit out of a rough period of time on everybody and do something productive. So, so he willingly did all this, and now he's getting into, contemplating college ahead. Obviously, there's summer coming here first. Um, but we'll see where he ends up. I'm, he has spent so much time with his bees, and he has his own hives. I'm not sure how many he's up to now. He might be over 80 hives, but I'm not 100% sure. And I gotta just say, I admire that. I suppose anybody listening to this who's a father, a dad, whatever, we're all gonna be biased, towards our kids and think they're the best in the world and all that. And so I admit that. I mean, I love my children and I'm very thankful for them, but there's a part of me, even as a man, I just admire what he's done because he has kind of an entrepreneurial drive that I can't really say I had when I was his age, to where there's some inner drive that would keep me up at night, that would keep me spending my spare time working on a business, if you will, instead of just goofing off. And don't get me wrong, he has time to goof off too, but there's just a lot of dedication he's put into it. And so, I know he's expressed sometimes frustration at the challenges of where, he's just starting in business and it's a money pit, to get going. And it, he worries he isn't making any money. And sometimes it's like, well, it isn't that you're not making money. You have every cent that you put into it. If you look around at all your bee boxes, your hives, the bees themselves, I mean, they're horrendously expensive, way more than I ever thought they would be. Just to get a working hive, if you buy it outright, could be several $100s. So he sees all this and he sees money going out the door, and by the same token, it's a little bit slower coming in, when you're starting out. But he's had a stick-to-itiveness that I really admire. And whether it's him or other young people, there's so much negative out there said about a lot of the kids and this generation. And oh my goodness, did we finish? I think we did. So much negative said, about this generation. It's just heartwarming to see examples here and there of kids who are learning to work hard and putting their shoulder to the wheel and giving it a go, and not just complaining, whining, sitting back, expecting someone else to do everything for them. Oops. Oh, good grief. I still need driving lessons. So, and again, I mean, not to just beg people to comment, but if you have any comments, I'd be interested in reading them. Everybody has some young people in their life and watching them grow. And sure, I mean, there's going to be examples of, I can think of examples too, of, situations that aren't the best, where there's bad attitudes and all those kinds of things. But it sure is good to hear and to see examples of those that are trying, to do something different. In some ways it's sad to say, but if the hardest thing you have to do when you enter the job market is simply show up for work on time, uh, well, I would think you could fall off a log. Falling off a log would be harder than that. And I think of, well, I won't mention. I was going to say something about the place where I work, but um, I guess I won't say that here. Suffice it to say, it's not that hard to compete in the workplace if you are willing to show up and actually work and dig in and do what you were asked to do. It's really not that hard. I'm looking at the time here. I'm really not sure how much has elapsed, but I'm assuming it's probably half an hour, so I'm gonna stop the episode here. Thank you for coming along to another episode on Gelvin Valley. I hope you all have a good night, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care.